Before we get out of here on today's show, want to do our college football top 10. We do it every Wednesday here at the show. And I go through the top 10 names. We kind of compare where I had them last week, where the AP poll has them, and kind of just break them down a little bit. And that's how we'll close out our show. Here on a Wednesday, the two teams on the outside looking in are like kind of that 11-12 range. I have Miami, right? I have them falling all the way outside the top 10. I had them at 3 last week. They lose Friday at home against Louisville. Solid Louisville team. Only one loss. Carson Beck looked horrid through 4 picks. Could have been about 6 or 7 picks, to be completely honest with you. Cristobal, it's not a game you can lose at home. I get it's kind of a weird week. It's Friday, but it's a lot of eyeballs on you. At that point, you failed, right? I don't think anybody is surprised that Miami lost a type of game like this. This is something that Miami does, right? In recent years, it's kind of a game they would lose. And a lot of us thought that it was going to be different this year because the offensive line was better. The defense was better. The quarterback at the time, going into the game, was being really careful with the football and protecting it. And that all kind of blew up in their face. They have an opportunity to right the ship here and get to the playoff. Their schedule's weak. Nobody really should test them the rest of the way. So, they can win out and get in the playoff. But, I think, we all were like, Miami's for real. They're back. No, they're not, as they lose that game at home to Louisville. They're on the outside looking in. BYU also on the outside looking in. They're undefeated here at this point. I think they're Texas Tech lost to Arizona State, so, you might think that they're not the best team in the Big 12 anymore. I still think they are, to be honest with you, despite the loss. They're not as good as I thought, but I still think Texas Tech's the best team. But BYU, they're undefeated. They beat Utah. That's a big-time win for them on the road, and the UC Bearcats going to have to deal with them in a few weeks. So BYU, they look like a playoff team here at this point. I don't expect them to make any noise. True freshman quarterback Bear Bachmeier doing some good things there at that position for them. So I've got them just barely on the outside looking in. If they continue to win, they're going to have to be in the top 10 at some point, but I'm not fully sold yet. At number 10, I have Ole Miss. Last week I had them 9. The AP poll has them 8. The AP poll was really high on them going into the Georgia game, had them all the way up at 5. We said here that's too much, right? Georgia's going to win this game. I didn't think it would be as close as it was, to be honest with you, but Ole Miss is still a good team. There's no shame losing to Kirby Smart in Georgia, right? Everybody loses to Kirby Smart in Georgia besides Alabama. So I think they'll be all right. I think they'll be a playoff team. But as we just mentioned in our previous segment, there could be some distractions here as we move forward with Lane Kiffin. And, is he kind of taking a peek at that Florida job? How committed is he to the program? There's still talent there. They still got a solid defense, which they got lit up against Georgia and Gunnar Stockton, which is a little bit concerning there for me because the defense for Ole Miss kind of was one of the things that kind of solidified them as a top 10 team in my eyes, and they struggled there. So their schedule gets difficult. This Oklahoma game they got coming up, that's a feisty Oklahoma bunch that needs a victory after getting smacked in Red River. And, that's going to be a great college football game. But I still have belief. I figured Ole Miss was going to lose that Georgia game, but I actually leave that game with a little bit more faith in Ole Miss than I did coming into the football game. At number 9, I have Georgia Tech. Last week, they were outside my top 10. The AP poll has them all the way up at that 7 spot. You got to give him credit. Brent Key, what he's doing as head coach, tremendous. Haynes King is just a dog at that quarterback position. Around him, I don't think they have enough dudes. Like if they played, one of these top 5 teams, like an Oregon or, a Georgia or an A&M or certainly an Indiana, Alabama, Ohio State, I don't know if they could hang, but they deserve a lot of credit for what they've been doing to this point. Clemson, they beat them. Clemson's not a very good football team. We thought they were going to be a national title contender. They are not. But that Duke team's solid, and the Duke team was favored in the game, and, that game really wasn't very competitive as Georgia Tech really took it to them from start to finish. So I don't anticipate them making some kind of run in the college football playoff, but you got to give them credit where credit is due. Got them at that number 9 spot. Brent Key, that Penn State job's open. That Florida job's open. Shoot, the LSU job could perhaps become open. The Arkansas job is open. So we'll see if Brent Key perhaps is on the move. At number 8, I got Notre Dame. The AP poll has them at 12, and I didn't have them in the top 10 last week. They have 2 losses. I understand that, but Notre Dame's one of the best teams in the country, in my opinion. Some struggles on defense, obviously, but I think Marcus Freeman has done a better job of that in recent weeks. They beat USC by 10. Didn't even really feel like it was that close. That's a Notre Dame offense. It's really, really good. One of the best running attacks in America. Definitely have the 2 best, the best backfield in America with Price and Jeremiah Love. C.J. Carr is playing at a high level. Look, they just had 2 difficult games out to shoot, A&M and Miami. right? Now, Miami's not as good as maybe we thought, and maybe A&M's not either, but they're two, solid teams with a new quarterback. You're going in on the heels of going to the national championship. It's tough. And, I think Notre Dame, they're going to run the table, I think, and they're going to be a playoff team. I am much higher on Notre Dame than the AP poll is. I got them all the way up at 8. 7, Vandy. Last week I had them outside the top 10, and the AP poll has them at 10. This isn't Vanderbilt last year. Right? It's not. I understand, Pavio's back. It's Clark Lee, whatever. It's a real football team. And they were hanging right with Alabama, and they probably would have beat them if they didn't have the 2 red zone turnovers. Diego Pavia at the next level, he's not an NFL quarterback, but he's a really, really good college football quarterback. Is he maybe a little bit too old to be playing college football? You can make that argument, but he's a dog, right? And his team fully supports him and believes in him and rallies around him, and he's done a tremendous job to this point. LSU is not nearly as good as we thought. They're fraudulent. Brian Kelly, as I mentioned, might lose his job, but they dominated that game, right? And, they won that game. It was a big win for them, and now they have another opportunity here against Missouri. I might be a little bit too high on Vandy, but if they take care of Missouri at home with, incredible atmosphere, game day going to be there this weekend, Missouri's really for real. But this is a team that they're hanging in there in the SEC, and I'm not going to be surprised at all if they make the playoff. Obviously, they can probably only lose one more game if they want to get in. But Vandy's a real team now, and I got them at 7. It's not like last year it was, they beat Alabama, but that Alabama team, they weren't good. I get they were number 1 in the country at the time, but that team was horrible. The quarterback was horrible. It was a new, staff. The defense was horrible. That wasn't like, some crazy win. It's not like going to Columbus and beating Ohio State this year, right? So, but it was kind of a cute story last year, whatever. It's a real team. There's a real team, and they can do damage. Got Vandy at 7. A&M at 6. Look, I've been high on A&M all year. Last week I had them at 4. The AP poll has them at 3 right now. They won last week, but I got questions there with that defense. Petrino, the interim guy at Arkansas, he knows offensive football, so it shouldn't be so much of a shock that Arkansas has looked pretty competent, or pretty good, really, on offense the past couple of weeks. But, you can't be giving up that many points to Arkansas. I don't think so. I got some questions there with the defense of Mike Elko. Talk about, he's not going anywhere, but we talk about those head coaching openings. You should be calling about Elko, and you should be seeing a Mike Elko extension or a Mike Elko raise at any point, I think, for A&M. But I'm a little bit, taking a step back a little bit from A&M. They're still really good. They can prove it with their schedule the rest of the way. Marcel Reed was tremendous in the game. That defense concerned me a little bit. So despite the win, I have them dropping from 4 to 6 in my rankings. Georgia, got them at 5. It's Kirby. It's Georgia. It looks a little bit different this year. The defense doesn't look like a Georgia defense. But if you get Gunnar Stockton and Zachariah Branch and that run game going, that tight end is incredible as well. Lawson Lucky is unbelievable. And, look, Georgia's the real deal. They can win the national title. It looks different, as I just mentioned, than Georgia teams and Kirby Smart teams of the past. Last week I had them at 7. The AP poll has them right here at 5. I've got them at 5. To go out there and hang 40-plus on Ole Miss in a game where your defense wasn't getting any stops and just kind of beat them in a shootout and beat them 17-0, I think, in the fourth quarter. So you got stops when you needed to. Says a lot about Kirby and that team. Kirby's the best coach in the country, and that's going to give them some wins the rest of the way. Georgia, they lost to Bama. They've got an Alabama problem, but basically everybody else in the country has an Alabama problem too. Georgia's the real deal. I got them at 5. Oregon, I had them at 8 last week, but since that Indiana loss, Dan Lanning is ticked off, and he's got his team playing ticked off. I get they played Rutgers, bottom feeder in the Big Ten. I understand that, but they beat the crud out of them, and they're getting committed to run the football again. He doesn't want to be some, finesse team. Like, he is trying to be physical and punch you in the mouth, win at the line of scrimmage, run the football, and they've done that over the course of the past few weeks. Oregon, it was a slip-up against Indiana, but Indiana's a top team in the country, right? So I don't think you can bang on Oregon necessarily too much for that, but they're playing with some anger, some rage. They're ticked off, and they're very much a threat to win the national title here at this point. Last week I had them at 8 all the way up to 4. AP has them at 6. Indiana, have them at number 3. Last week I had them at number 2, and the AP poll has them at number 2. They beat Michigan State, got off to a slow start in the game. I like Michigan State to cover in that game. They did. I am fascinated, by the way. I am so excited for this game at noon, UCLA and Indiana. Signetti said it himself in the press conference. He goes, this UCLA team, they're an undefeated team. right? They're a 3-0 football team because it's a complete regime switch for UCLA after they lost. They went 0-4 to start, and they're losing to crappy teams. And all of a sudden, they're winning games in conference. Like, they have been a great story, a great turnaround. It's been fascinating to watch that. Iam Aliava is like, oh, that looks like the guy that we expected him to look like and how he looked at parts throughout Tennessee last year. But I'm excited for that game. I'm not going to sit here and say UCLA is going to pull an upset. They got to go to Bloomington. It's a big spread, but I'm really fascinated by that game, and we'll see how Indiana looks in that game. But dropping them has nothing to do with them. I still think the world of Indiana, and they are still for real. But dropping them has to do with Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama Crimson Tide. I mean, I've said it multiple times on the show. I can't say it enough. The turnaround that we've seen from this team is unbelievable. What happened that first week? They looked completely non-competitive in the game. They looked soft. They looked like there was no culture established. The effort wasn't there. Like, they did nothing right in that football game. And all they've done since then is do things right. And Kalen DeBoer deserves a ton of credit for that. The gauntlet in which he has navigated over the course of the past few weeks, insane. Absolutely insane. Just ranked opponents, Georgia, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Tennessee, beating them all. Now they got to go on the road against the South Carolina team. This could be a letdown week, right, for Alabama. Coming into the year, Carolina was supposed to, be a threat in the SEC. They're kind of a dumpster fire here at this point. But, Sellers, that's the type of quarterback that has given Alabama issues in the past. We'll see. I think the spread is only like 13 points, so Vegas knows that there's an opportunity here for Carolina at home, so they can't afford a letdown game. But the way he's moving, Kalen DeBoer, talking about Ryan Day moving different. Kalen DeBoer's moving different too. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's coaching with some rage, some anger. Like, you're seeing that out of Oregon and out of Alabama here at this point, because they both have a loss. They're both ticked off and trying to be more violent, be more physical at the line of scrimmage, and they've done a tremendous job of that. To this point, but I got Alabama at the number 2 spot. Had them at 5 last week. AP poll has them at 4. Could be a potential letdown game against Carolina, but they after that bounce back from Florida State, they deserve that number 2 spot. And we talk about kind of the tiers, how Ohio State has separated themselves from the rest of the country, and they have. Alabama is that next best thing where you go, they can give Ohio State the best shot, right? I think Oregon could give them a shot, and maybe Indiana could give them a shot there as well, and Georgia. But I think Alabama can give them the best shot here at this point, but still plenty more work to do for the Crimson Tide and Kalen DeBoer. At 1, Ohio State, they've been there all year. Last week I had them at 1. The AP poll has them at 1. I mean, shutting out Wisconsin. Wisconsin doesn't score, so, take it with a grain of salt, right? Iowa shut them out, I believe. So, that's a bad team in Wisconsin. We might be talking about Luke Fickell replacements sooner rather than later here on this show. But that defense is crazy. And I think, some of the Bama defenses and, certainly that 09 defense, of course, was real. The 14 or the 15 defense for Bama was real. The 21 Georgia defense, those are some of the best teams, the best defenses that we've seen in my lifetime. It might be a little bit early to put Ohio State in the company of them, but if they run the table here and then go on another run in the playoffs, I mean, you got to put them up there along with those defenses as well. They are unbelievable. They can apply pressure on the line of scrimmage. It's difficult to run against Ohio State. They cover. Their linebackers are so good. They're fast. They're great in coverage. Their safeties are incredible. They got players that are versatile, like Caleb Downs. You can line them up wherever you want. Same really with Arvell Reese. You got guys that are just chess pieces that Matt Patricia can put in different spots. And obviously he's calling the shots. Their DC, who's won, 3 Super Bowls. So what they're doing defensively is incredible. Saying they finally opened it up because they were struggling to run the ball against Wisconsin, which, by the way, if there's one thing Wisconsin has done decently this year, it's stop the run. Bama had issues running on them early in the year as well. And they were like, oh, we can't run the ball. Julian, see what you got. And, if you got any wagers on him to win the Heisman, there's a cash out now is all I'll say as it relates to that. But Sayin played unbelievable. He's going to continue to play unbelievable, and we'll see if anybody can knock them off. But Ohio State has separated themselves from the pack here at this point. So once again, on the outside looking in, just barely Miami and BYU, 10 Ole Miss, 9 Georgia Tech, 8 Notre Dame, higher on them than many other people in the country, 7 Vandy, kind of higher on them than many other people in the country as well, 6 A&M, 5 Georgia, 4 Oregon, 3 Indiana, 2 Bama, and 1 the Ohio State Buckeyes.